Hello and welcome to Central Georgia Focus, this month's Ask Mayor Miller edition. I'm your host, Liz Fabian from the Murphy Center for Collaborative Journalism. Welcome, Mr. Mayor. I appreciate you taking time out to have us ask questions of the public and our journalists. You know, over the past two county commission meetings, there's been discussion about the United Daughters of the Confederacy wanting to install a historical placard about a Black Confederate fifer, Charlie Binger. And then in the first week, the pre-commission vote was unanimous, but then before the second vote, the final vote, Commissioners Virgil Watkins, Paul Bronson, and Mayor Pro Tem Seth Clark changed their vote. And then last week, before both meetings, you explained that you were exercising your authority to block that donation and calling for a community conversation. So what transpired between those 2 weeks?
Nothing really. It was just conversation. I think we wanted to make sure that before we installed a plaque there in the Confederate section of Rose Hill Cemetery, that we all were operating under the same facts. There were some misunderstandings of whether or not this person was free or not free, whether they were forced into this servitude. So I think answering all those questions became important. So as mayor, I was authorized to not accept the donation of that placard right now, and I reached out to the NAACP with Gwen Westbrook and some of her folks, as well as the UDC, United Daughters of the Confederacy, to try to set up an appointment. We're going to get those groups together in the near future, and hopefully they can have some conversation and do back a report. And I wouldn't expect any activity to happen on that for quite a while.
Well, from Facebook, an entity called Confederate Flag Snatchers commented that there's no reason to offer the United Daughters of the Confederacy any legitimacy or voice in this process. It's an organization dedicated to falsifying history. What are your thoughts about that comment?
I don't have any thoughts about that. You know, we were talking to some of my commissioners, and I said, you know, there are certain things that come before us that we have a process that we have. Well, not necessarily a political process, but it's just procedural. Like if, you know, just say for instance, a group like the KKK wanted to come to Macon to have a march. They could jump through the proper processes and go through to have that march. It's something we wouldn't necessarily be able to prohibit doing it. Sometimes you've had some rights to do some things, even though we don't want people to exercise those types of rights. So I don't get involved in all that. We're just trying to control what happens on our agenda. I think this is the best thing for the community, to place this on hold, to take a deep breath and get all the facts and make sure that everyone gets heard.
And wasn't the UDC supportive of the move for the monuments that were downtown over to Rose Hill Cemetery in a designated spot? Right. And what kinds of conversations have you had with them since this?
Well, just that I reached out to ask them if they would be willing to meet on both sides, and told them that I was going to hold off on accepting any donations. So I think that they'll have that meeting. It may not take place until next year. So it's something we shouldn't rush, have a little time. But this came through our Parks and Beautification, you know, through the normal process. It did, you know, as you saw in the vote, it really didn't meet the plateau to, you know, get anybody's attention too much. It just seemed like something they were going to do in the Confederate part of the cemetery that nobody really would see. Despite what some people say, it's not a monument. I think people purposely said that to erect the emotions of people, to make it seem like we were doing something that we did before to move, but it's just a little placard that was going to be placed somewhere in the Confederate portion of the cemetery.
Removing those former monuments downtown that are now in Rose Hill Cemetery, that was part of the Macon Action Plan. And now the XL plan is going forward. How does that process work, and why is it important for the city to have a Macon Action Plan?
Well, I think it's important because if you don't plan for things, they're not going to happen. I think you need to get a lot of input. Having those types of plans and meetings allow everyone in our community to have input before you make these big decisions. You also want to kind of take a look and see, you know, where do we see ourselves in 5, 10, 15, 20 years? And to have those type of plans, you need to know what type of infrastructure you need to have, what kind of funding you need to arrange, and what type of you know, collaboration that you need to have between a large group of people. So it's always important to plan. We have a lot of partners that work behind the scenes in doing that, and we're looking forward to moving to the next levels.
And it's also very public driven, isn't it? That's how Macon has gotten so much recognition, I think, in recent years, because of the way the community comes together, offers suggestions, and then it formulates into a plan.
There's a lot of public engagement going on. A lot of these plans that you see, you know, we're sitting at the table, we get to listen to those great plans and put them into action and put some money behind them a lot of times. But it comes directly from the people in our community that show up to these meetings, and they engage in these meetings, and lo and behold, a couple of years later, you have this great plan.
Well, our GPB colleague, Grant Blankenship, asks, the city just hired an affordable housing coordinator. How will she connect the Macon Housing Authority, the Land Bank, and the $7.5 million affordable housing funds? What are the immediate and long-term goals?
Well, nothing's changed there as far as immediate long-term goals. We want to get as much inventory as we can that is affordable to people out into the market. We had one planting we just announced here recently over in Pleasant Hill. There's going to be about 64, 65 residences there. We're excited about that possibility. Having someone at the helm that actually can market it now, go through the forums, get engaged into the community will help do that process much quicker. We have until through 2026 to get the funds out the door. We're working on that. So we want to make sure by hiring this person here, who I think is a good hire, can just really hit the ground running. She's already done some proposals on the budget, but we have a committee with a lot of folks on there, with the Housing Authority, with the Land Bank Authority, with the school system, with the county and other experts on there. So we're making some good progress, and I expect for 2025 to be a great year for housing in Macon-Bibb County.
Of course, blight remediation has been a big platform of your administration, but recently there's been some legal action from a man who said that his property was bulldozed in the blight fight while he was working on it. Is there anything you can comment about that situation or how the blight program moves?
Not really. It's just when you have litigation like that, we have to kind of take a step back. What I'll say is that we generally do not tear any houses down that had homestead exemptions on there. We do have a process. This particular person was notified, at least the owner of were notified about 20 months ahead of time and didn't take the steps necessary. But I think when the day comes up to court, we'll be willing to take our chances in that situation. I think Macon-Bibb County is going to come out fine.
Where are we in the blight fight? Can you just
we're
call a number out of your head?
I think we're approaching 800, but we have started to slow down a little bit because now we're getting into those rehabable houses that we've looked at through Land Bank, through our Macon-Bibb County Affordable Housing Fund. Code enforcement has done a lot on the front end, so we don't have these blighted situations. So I think we're going to start slowing down on that and starting to rehab a lot more homes. We still have some on the list, and of course we'll get to those in proper time. But we want to make sure that we start now building some houses. That's going to be our main focus.
And speaking of building houses, Planning and Zoning Commission is holding an open house on October 30th from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. where they're going to be discussing the revisions to the comprehensive land resolution that governs the future growth. What are the important factors for Macon to consider as the community grows?
I think you got to have positive growth. I think that's one thing to have growth, and the other thing is to make sure you have positive growth. As we saw out in South Bibb County a long time ago, they did not really plan ahead of time, and you had so much growth out there without the necessary infrastructure. And that's why we have a lot of the flooding problems we have out there now. I think this is a smart step on their behalf. I hope people will engage in there, put their input there, and make sure they can come up with a good plan that's going to be something that's going to be sustainable for a long period of time.
And also at the last county commission meeting, y'all agreed to spend over $500,000 to do some renovations to the campgrounds at Lake Toposofke and repair the docks there. How does that fit in with the glamping proposal that's on the table, and where are we with that in the RFP process?
I think the only company that proposed the initial proposal is the one who made the proposal, so we'll be reviewing that in the near future. I think it all works together because it's all, they're different parts of the lake. The money we put aside out there has been something that's been needed to be done for a while, so a lot of people are excited about that going out there. We need to upgrade those campgrounds, make sure they're put to good use, and it needs a little TLC, but I think that we're well on the way to do that.
The GBI has been called in to investigate the death of an inmate who was tased for alleged unruly behavior while in custody. So that prompted our GPB partner, Sophie Gratis, to ask, is the city actively deploying a mental health co-responder with officers yet? That was a program that was announced probably about a year ago.
The sheriff has that program operating there now, so I think that question is probably more directed to him. Mm-hmm. As mayor, I get asked those questions all the time, but I honestly, he's a constitutional officer. He gets elected to do his job, and those hard questions need to go to him. Okay. We fund them at a high rate, and I think we've increased the spending there about $16 million. GBI is going to do their job. We're glad to have outside agencies coming in. We want to find out what's going on, and we know the truth. At the end of the day, if there's a litigation or something involved, of course the county has to step up on that. So that's one thing we always have to keep in mind and be educated about. But I think those questions have to be directed to the sheriff, and the charter took care of that for me, so I don't have a police chief that answers to me, so from this point on, people just need to address the sheriff.
But as far as you know, that the funds have been allocated to have those kind of counselor people available?
They do. He's hired some folks over there.
And now, how do you see the efforts of your administration working or not working when it comes to crime with the Macon Violence Prevention Program?
I think we're well ahead of schedule. I think we have seen our numbers go down a lot. You know, and I will say this, because I just hate to repeat what the sheriff says before, is when something happens to you, crime's up 100%. But despite what people may think and believe, and we see all the time in the media, crime is down in Macon-Bibb County. Violent crime is down. We have an uptick in some property crimes. That usually happens in this situation. Our cameras, our technology, our police are doing a wonderful job of solving it. We still have to work on those response times. There's not a silver bullet on that one, but I think we have to do a better job on response time. It's something I'm going to be looking at when we start talking about giving increased salaries and increased pay and all these other benefits. I'm going to need to know from the purse strings how we're going to make this response times better if we can continue to do that.
And in full disclosure for our next question, it concerns the evening of faith, hope, and unity at the Atrium Health Amphitheater on November 10th. It's partly due with Hope for the Heart of Georgia, an organization that I'm affiliated with. So I just wanted to get that out first. But our Macon Melody executive editor, Caleb Slinkard, asks, why did you feel it was important to promote that religious event at the amphitheater and tie it to violence prevention?
Well, I think for a lot of reasons. Number one, they didn't have a promoter. You know, all these other concerts that come in to the Atrium Amphitheater, they have their own promoters. They determine time, place, and manner, how many tickets get sold, whether they cancel a concert or not. This particular event, we've heard a lot. I mean, my Facebook page, social media, all year people have been asking for these types of concerts. So they reached out to me, asked me if I could assist them a little bit. I have a large following on my social media. And certainly if any other concert would ask me to do the same thing, I would have done the same thing, and I have on a couple of those. So I think it's important, number one, because we're about to go through a very tumultuous election. November the 5th will be here before you know it, and I think it's going to, just depending on who wins or don't win, it doesn't matter. Both sides, there's going to be some issues that we need some healing on. I think no better way to have that a week later on a Sunday evening, to have a time for unity and hope and have some good, clean music. People need to get involved in that, and I think it's something that ties directly getting our youth there, getting them in front of good, clean music like that in a good atmosphere, wholesome atmosphere, and hopefully we can have some good things come of it.
So I know it's been your dream for a while that we have a mass choir put together from different churches, black, white, young, old, everything. Well, why is that important to bring people together in unity like that?
Because I think we're stronger together, and I think that you know, a lot of things have been said this year about music bringing people together and the unification we have around that. And also, we have some of our our top churches here in Macon, but also Warner Robins. So we have the Sound Collective, we've got Beulah Land, Fellowship, First Presbyterian, Second Baptist. It's going to bring a lot of people together at a good time. A good diverse crowd there is what we're looking for, a wholesome environment, and a way that we can just springboard our community up into 2025 to be a better place to live.
And of course, you know, the reason the tickets are what they are is because we also have Ty Tribbett, Israel Holton, Rebecca St. James, and Mike Kinnerbrew coming. So it's kind of like a concert and a unification effort at the same time. At
the same time, people don't realize a concert like this costs about $225,000, $250,000 to put on and to promote. It's not inexpensive. So we need to make sure that we sell tickets and make sure that people show up so we can continue to have these types of events.
Okie dokie. We're also getting a lot of feedback, as I mentioned, about those speed cameras at the school zones. People like Lynn Teet seem to be confused about what the flashing lights mean and the regular speed limit outside the arrival and departure hours.
Well, I'll try to make it as simple as I can, as always. And
Don't speed.
I'm about to, about to close the subject on this. But bottom line is the school day is defined as 1 hour before school begins until 1 hour until the last bell rings at that particular school. The easiest way to look at that is when the lights are on, you have a reduced speed. That gives you notice that, hey, something is changing. The lights are flashing. So if it used to be 35 miles an hour, the light's flashing, it's going to be whatever the speed says there, which is 25 miles per hour. However, during the school-defined day, if the lights are not on, you must go the regular speed limit, but they give you 10 miles. So you don't get a ticket until you go 11 miles over. People say, well, put more signage up, but really if you're going by 30, 45 miles an hour, you're not going to read about 10 different times on the signage. We go over and above what's required by state law. We pride ourselves in doing that. Part of the money we spend on all these other lights and signs is additional monies we did because we wanted people to be open and transparent. Look, the numbers have gone up on collections only because we've added new schools to our areas. We have seen a speed decrease in most of the school zones. You should see tickets go down in those zones as people become more educated about them. But the bottom line is if you really want to stick it to the government, you think it's a money grab, don't speed. We'll get zero money and we'll all be happy because of it.
Well, Robert and Rita Nabel want to know about how many tickets have been issued and how much money that brought in and who receives the revenue and how's it spent.
So it's a 75-25 split between the company that owns, purchased the equipment, which is large expenditures. You also got to realize too, they send out all the notices, they keep up with all the information, they mail it to your house, give you the court dates and all that stuff. And as you know, the cost of postage these days has gone up tremendously. Macon-Bibb County is not equipped to handle that. We don't have the equipment. We couldn't do it for that $25. So it saves Macon-Bibb County money, no matter if they're from Maryland or if they're from Macon. We don't have the equipment. We don't have the manpower to do that. The 75% must be spent for public safety. A lot of that goes to the sheriff's department with equipment, new cars, new cameras, the flock cameras, the Verkada cameras downtown. Our Macon Violence Prevention program has gotten some of that for grants for Community Foundation. For lighting, we're doing some things with the school system that we'll announce soon on how to make their schools more safer. So all that's going to be, have to be done. And this has been over a 3-year period of time. I don't know the number of tickets. I think they just got released by somebody, but just several $1 million over 3 years is not a lot of money. We collect that from Georgia State Patrol doing their enforcement just on the interstates. So, but the bottom line is this is a still civil citation. It doesn't affect people's insurance. It's not a criminal violation, but it has to go to public safety, and people ought to be excited that we're spending money on public safety and making it a safer environment to live in.
And can you give us any feedback on the other technology that you've put in place, such as shot spotters and the other cameras that are downtown? Verkada's solving cases left and right. We're safer downtown because of it. You're still going to have some issues, but it has some of the recognitions on there, so we were able to get somebody committed a particular crime. I go back to the person who was hit on the park bench there. We were able to track them throughout the entire downtown, went exactly where they were at, picked them up and arrested that person. Solving cases left and right. It's a very valuable tool. The shot spotter is doing wonderful of electing where the shots are being fired at, so we can really hone in on where to put the resources at. So like it or not, we're going to get in the AI world very soon. We're already there. People, a little bit older don't recognize that, but if we don't get ahead of the curve, we're going to be way behind. Mr. Mayor, the Macon Water Authority is poised to raise rates to address crumbling infrastructure. And our 13 WMAZ partner, Nicole Bailey-Coben, asks, how much money did Macon get from the Congressional Bipartisan Infrastructure Bill, and what are your plans for it?
Well, I don't know the total amount that we have got so far. It's based on project need. So, of course, we got some ARPA funds a couple of years ago. We continue to spend those, and that time is running out. In the next couple of months, we'll be completely deleted those funds. The infrastructure bill itself, we've been working with Senator Ossoff mainly on those funds. Senator Bishop, of course, Congressman Bishop, all of them really, but mainly those two have been working with us to get some infrastructure for our airports, for our roads, for our bridges. So we're submitting projects that we believe are shovel ready to them, and hopefully we'll get awarded some of those projects in the near future. But it's not going to solve all our problems. We have to still continue to plan for growth that we have in our community. We have a SPLOST coming up, in 2025, and I suspect we'll look at some infrastructure in the SPLOST as well. So it takes all hands on deck to make sure we meet the financial needs to kind of get ahead of what we got planning.
I know one of the priorities you have is an unprecedented amount of money for road work, and Ruth Solomon says that so many of the roads are in desperate need of just restriping. She says it's hard to see the lines along Bass Road and Northside Drive. I know you're getting ready to do major improvements there, but any plans just to restripe?
We do have a restriping program. We do it all the time. That's part of our LMIG money as well. We can use for restriping.
Local maintenance and improvement grant.
We do look for putting a large number into our SPLOST for paving of all the roads, but you're certainly not going to go stripe a road that you're going to turn around and repave in the very near future. So we just have to kind of wait on some of that. And some of the roads that people mention all the time are the state roads, not county roads, so they're responsible for that. But like I said, we don't want to spend a couple $100,000 to go put stripes on a road that we know we're going to pave in 6 months to a year. It just doesn't make good financial sense to do that. But the state can also help on some of their roads as well, and reflectors also help. But the other thing that helps is maintain the safe speeds that you have. If you're going to speed limit, a lot of times you don't have those issues, and we just ask for people to look out ahead.
Well, my good friend Ann Steele said that she noticed the overpass on I-75 at Riverside Drive there in between the cemeteries, brand new bridge, already has 4-foot weed growth, and the lights have been shot out. Any comment on vandalism and maintenance issues there?
First I've heard about that. I think you may have some weed growth until it actually gets finished. I mean, the whole project, there's no sense going through there, spraying, cleaning all that up when you still got building that has to be done and final inspections that has to be done on that. So the state is doing all that, so I asked her to direct all the questions to the state of Georgia. Until the lights get turned on and get transferred over to Macon-Bibb County, they're not our responsibility.
And one more on Blight. Mrs. Towns says Newburgh Avenue is in disrepair, and it looks like someone's having a flea market in their front yard. How are plans progressing with illegal dumping and those things?
Legal dumping's going fine. We've got a lot less of them than we used to have. It's still a challenge. But I would say that she needs to call code enforcement if they have some, hoarders or type of flea market activities. We've been pretty good about going through courts on those and getting those things taken care of.
In the past month or so, Macon-Bibb County has stopped broadcasting the non-agenda item comments, the public comments at the end of the meetings. Do you know what the reason was for that change? No, because there's agenda comments that come at the beginning,
right.
And then there's, sometimes a lot of people.
Well, a lot of times it's not related to anything that we have on an upcoming agenda, and we don't want to take up that time. We've also had problems with people showing up and grandstanding and cussing and kind of getting unruly on there. So people are always welcome to come there if they want to come in person, but we're not going to give people an avenue to sit there and just berate everybody and say these negative things on there on items that's not even coming up for a vote. If they're that important, they'll come up to vote on a later time. They'll be on the agenda on an agenda item, and people can get up there and actually say that. But we do a favor by doing everything Facebook Live to make it convenient for everyone. It's something we're not required to do. Certainly anyone's welcome themselves to come sit in the chamber with the rest of us and listen to all the wonderful things we got going on. But just to have a back and forth just from somebody's soapbox afterwards is something we're not going to accommodate any longer.
And public comments are just that. You don't even answer them. It's not a question and answer period.
That's correct.
I imagine too, at that time, somebody could just go out and say something about someone that's not substantiated, and then it's out there in perpetuity on social media. Is that part of the rationale too?
A lot of times people go there and they put out misinformation, or they'll take personal attacks against personnel, and we need time to, to evaluate those things. So it's something we can do in private. A lot of times we write all that information down, we follow back up with the folks there, but we're not giving people just an opportunity to have a one-sided argument with someone on things that are not even on our agenda.
We only have a minute left, but you mentioned it earlier. We're in the height of this election season. Any thoughts about how divided the nation seems to be and how we can come together after November 5th?
Well, I mentioned November 5th because that's the election, but we know with all the hurricanes and things that we've had here, particularly in North Carolina, we know with all the challenges that we've had about people having to vote, every vote, count by hand. We know by the record number of turnout that people have done so far, this election is not going to be over on November the 5th. It's going to be a while before those votes are counted, unfortunately. But I do think that we'll put it all behind us in very quick.
Well, we've got to put this show behind us, but remember, send your questions for Ask Mayor Miller to mercerccj@gmail.com, and we'll get you some answers next time. Thanks for joining us.